Welcome to Gaming. I'm John Robertson, and you'll immediately recognise that our theme music is different to normal. That's because our show this week is an interview with Double Fine's Tim Schafer, and we thought it appropriate to use music from Psychonauts, Double Fine's first game, which was released back in 2005. Personally, this is my favourite piece of music from the game, and I'm the one that edits these podcasts, so you'll have to just allow me this little flourish. The privilege of interviewing Tim was actually enjoyed by Stace Harmon, my fellow creator here at Indie by Design, so don't worry, you'll be rid of me shortly. We thought that this is a fantastic time to talk to Tim, given that we're coming up to the end of what has been a pretty unique year for most of us, and our next book, 20 Double Fine Years, is all about Double Fine. The book chronicles the studio's 2 decades in existence in the form of a rather beautiful, though I say so myself, hardcover book spanning 288 pages. We're very thankful to Double Fine for providing us unfiltered, unrivaled access to their art archives, and they've also given up a lot of their time to allow us to conduct tens of hours of original, exclusive interviews with them and their key collaborators, so that we don't miss a single story or a single insight. You can find out more about that at doublefinebook.com, where we're currently taking pre-orders. There are some pretty lovely pre-order incentives currently available right now, which include free shipping and the exclusive Legend edition of the book, so do make sure you check those out. Otherwise, on with the interview with Tim and Stace, which begins with Tim talking about the unusual nature of working as a studio whilst in lockdown.
You know, 2 weird things going on. We're shipping Psychonauts 2. I mean, not that weird. We told everyone we're doing it. We're supposed to be doing it. But unusual in that it's a big game and we're shipping it and we're in quarantine, so we're all locked in our house. So, you know, telling this story of the 20 years of Double Fine is really funny because it ends with this really odd chapter. I mean, the current story ends with this chapter where we're all locked in our homes, staring at each other across little Brady Bunch style collages of faces.
It seemed like the perfect time to do a book about Double Fine when we actually can't come and see you. We got to come and see you once earlier this year, which seems like a lifetime ago now. But yeah, and we were due to be coming out again around E3. Do you remember when that was a thing? When thousands of people used to gather in one place?
What's E3?
That seemed like a...
Can you imagine that? How disgusting. People breathing
And we all kind of knew it was somewhat unhygienic, even before this.
Well, I mean, I would get sick every year at PAX. You know, I would always be crazy about sanitizing my hands and stuff. And still get sick and be like, oh, whatever. Never thought I would die.
No. Wow, that was a dark start, wasn't it?
If anything, I thought it would make me stronger. Yeah, we're going to start over now. Again.
So, yes. Yeah, so we're making a book, Tim. Did you know? We're making this book. Have you heard about this? We're creating this book, 20 years of 20 Double Fine years. And haven't they been? How
lovely.
So.
What a lovely exception.
Yeah, 20 Double Fine years.
Great, I approve. I think that's a great idea. It has been a strange, weird story and fun.
Well,
and
it has, and it's ongoing,
unusual.
Of course. So there's a few things I'd like to touch on today. One of them is if you could just wrap up 20 years succinctly in a nice single statement, that would be awesome. But beyond that, also the last year your first year as a Microsoft studio, and that's something that is becoming increasingly common. Apparently, Microsoft spent 7.5 billion on Bethesda, which I'm sure is a drop in the ocean compared to what they paid for Double Fine, right? Yeah.
Paid for us, yeah. I mean, yeah. Who's not a double Xbox studio at this point? I mean, you guys are probably
without
an
even
Xbox
knowing
studio
it. Yeah.
in some ways. That's why this. Yeah. I hope you got paid. But yeah, it's funny. We are now an Xbox studio, but in some ways we started as an Xbox studio, and that our first game and our current game are both Psychonauts. And both with Microsoft, right? So that's how we got our start, is that I pitched the game to Ed Freeze when the Xbox launched. And here we are at the new Xbox launching, and we're still making Psychonauts games. Still making the same game.
Can you imagine? You seem to have a very strong desire for symmetry, it seems, that you start and end 2 decades, bookend 2 decades with... the same thing.
Well, we wanted to be considerate for the book authors. Someday someone's going to tell the story, and we wanted to have a really nice
somewhere to start, somewhere to finish. And it is actually, at time of recording, it quite literally is it's Xbox Day effectively today. So that's nice. Have you seen much of this fabled new Xbox? Do you have one? Have you been playing it?
Like it might get delivered while we're on this call.
We could do an unboxing.
It's like I got a tracking number and it's coming and it's going to be here. So you can
Tim
I can
Schafer
unbox it right here for you.
Do you know? I bet that would do gangbusters on YouTube. I bet that would be amazing. But anyway, so yes, 20 years. You started with Psychonauts, as you say. You're working on Psychonauts now. I would like to know: are there some particular personal highlights, and not so much necessarily in terms of games, not so much in terms of I love that game and that game I didn't like so much, but in terms of more on a studio level, kind of milestones for you as a studio? Are there things that you can point to and say, I don't know, like that skiing trip was awesome, or that particular breakthrough where that person came to me and said they were naming their firstborn child after me was amazing? Are there kind of things that have been for you as on a personal level that have meant significant, where you've seen significant milestones happen over these last 2 decades?
Yeah, I mean, there've been lots of highs and lows, and I try not to emphasize the lows because we survived them, and so who cares about those? But the most significant things, it's easier to look backwards and see what they were, and most of them involve the team. We've in the end, putting together this great team has been the ultimate creation of Double Fine, and some of them have worked here for so long. And I always remember it was a ski trip, actually, one of the first ski trips they went on. I was just looking at this room full of people who were just playing cards and cooking and laughing and drinking together, and I was like, wow, this company really likes each other. Like, they really like being together, and this is in some ways like one of the proudest things for me. It was just like we brought together a great group of people. And I had worked at LucasArts, and that was a great company too, but being able to start a company and be thoughtful when you're hiring people of the different personalities, and not just like, can this person program, but like, does this person want to work together in the way that we want to work together? And I emphasized some things that I really wanted to make a company that was, we've been through some contentious years. In the early days of video games, programmers ruled the roost, and artists were treated kind of badly. And it's hard to remember that now because artists, everyone probably feels like they're treated badly now. But we saw little factional wars like that. As each group fights for some respect. And I was like, we're going to have a culture where everybody respects each other. Everybody has mutual respect for every department, and really fought for that. And so it's really great to see the team working together and have that permeate. So when I'm in rooms where I'm not around, people still remember that it's really important to remember how lucky we are to be working.
And does that go some way to explaining why a lot of the staff that we spoke to, some of those, as you mentioned, have been there a long time. A lot of them talk about their job interviews, such as they were, and they talk about a big part of that job interview being going out for lunch, or talking about just having a 40-minute conversation about other media, or kind of like, it felt there was as much a discussion about sussing out who you are as a person and what you like, as well as just what does your CV say? Can you do X, Y, and Z? And was that a deliberate thing, or was that kind of that was just the way that you interviewed back in the day?
I think every company, we're not unique in part of that, where every company wants to have that lunch test where they try to figure out if they can stand being around that person. But there are other things that we were looking for too, which is a certain sense of collaboration and humility, and you can't be really arrogant to be a great collaborator. You have to be pretty humble and be really excited about other people's ideas too, and how you can help other people's ideas, and that's an important thing that we look for. And does a person order the right food at the restaurant? I think that's obviously very important. You don't want to have anyone who likes Twizzlers more than red vines, important stuff like that. But I think there is, every company has a cultural fit, and sometimes it's hard to put your finger on it. But we definitely look for a certain amount of, in some ways it's like there's a certain amount of kindness as well that you look for. I think, it's an understated value in most interviewing processes, but I feel like if you do it right, you can have a jerk-free work environment, which is really rare.
Imagine, yeah, that would be good. So then, as you've moved through the years, has the importance of hiring the right person culturally, is that something that you feel has that become more important for your studio fit as you've grown as a team? Has it become a thing where you've let it ride and think, well, do you know what, it does work out that people generally just find their groove and fit with other people eventually regardless, or is that still an important part of your hiring process?
Well, I think as long as you're hiring slowly, you can absorb each person and find a great fit, and both will change shape a little bit to fit with each other, and usually that will work out. On the times where we've had to staff up quickly is where we've had the most friction. Had the most, if you get a bunch of new people at once, sometimes it's hard to make sure the values and the culture of the company is absorbed and shared among all the new people, and you can have different kinds of conflicts.
And that's...
Luckily, we've never had any conflicts.
Ever. No. 20 years, no conflict, which is good. And is that where having these staff members who have been around for a long time, do they act as kind of the... I don't know, like the custodians, is that not right? No, perhaps like the champions of the studio culture.
The bearers of the torch, or the keeper of the great book of values. I mean, there is a lot of benefit to that, having people in all disciplines, in programming and in art and production that have been there for a long time, so that when, when newer members of the team are worried about something, they can hear how we've resolved that in the past. And because a lot of people on the team have seen a lot of stuff, and so they can be, oh yeah, we've been here before. We had worse than this before. Don't worry. This is we've solved harder problems than this.
Do you happen to have anybody on staff who is an expert in global pandemics? Is that a thing that you?
Trying to think. A global pandemic. No, we've never had a global pandemic. It's a new one. But when first Psychonauts had 9/11 happened during it, and that was awesome. Awesome's not the word I was going to use, but it was definitely it was definitely the world keeps turning and huge things happen. Hold on 1 second. 1 second.
Well, as you can hear, working from home has its unique challenges and its charms for all of us. So I thought this would be a good time to remind you to follow us on social media. We are at Indie by Design on all platforms, and to let you know that we have a YouTube channel which has video versions of our podcasts, including this one, and also has playthroughs of games and other goodies, so do check that out. And don't forget, head over to doublefinebook.com to secure your copy of 20 Double Fine Years, our big book of all things Double Fine. So on with the interview. We rejoin Tim and Stace with Tim talking about the working and creative culture at Double Fine.
I mean, it's a time during a global pandemic when we had our first all-team video conference meeting. And I was like, oh God, what are we gonna do? And seeing everyone's face, everyone looked so happy to see each other, and everyone looked like everyone's gonna extend themselves and reach out and do extra work to make sure we're still connected. And that's when you see the payoff for working so hard on culture, and having a team it's not like everyone's there working for me. It's not like everyone comes to the company and is excited about working for me. Their day-to-day work is about being excited about working with each other and being kind of held in horizontally. And so that really pays off in times of strain, where they're not all just looking at me to give some great Kenneth Branagh speech, and make everyone feel excited all the time. But they see each other's faces, and they feel comforted by that.
And so, is there a thing for all the negative things that have certainly come out of the current situation and the pandemic? Are there things that you can look at and feel that, I don't know, are there ways that the team has grown that perhaps wouldn't or couldn't have happened if everybody was still in the office? So I'm trying to think of something that might be a positive, kind of a thank COVID for that, because now we do things this way. I don't know, has it?
Well, and there's one thing where I feel like it does help us, to some degree. Remote working is just a future way of everyone's life, because it was heading there already with telecommuting and people wanting to the globalization of the world. We had people working on teams from all around the world, and that was, in some ways, a founding thing for Double Fine. I wanted to have more flexibility with the team. We had an artist who wanted to work 3 days a week, and Lucas said no, and so he quit. And I was like, I want to be more flexible with the team, and that got tested when Tyler Hurd, one of our early animators, said, I want to move to Iceland, but I don't want to quit.
Wow.
So we had a remote worker in Iceland, and it was like. And he was incredibly productive because there was nothing to do there after, it got really cold outside, and he got a lot of animation done. We're like, this is great. So we've had remote workers, and we've had them, represent on little screens. And for a long time, they were the oddballs, and they'd be like, I hope I can hear what people are saying in this meeting, and we try to accommodate it, but it wasn't we were mostly thinking about people who were in the office. And maybe now that we've all experienced what it's like to see each other in these tiny little squares, that we are, probably more considerate of all our remote team members like Ray and Nathan, Bagel Stapley, and all those, and Evan, and anyway. So that's one.
Okay. Well, I mean, we'll take that. I think that's that's to find something. I think is an achievement. So that's good.
Yeah. I mean, it's not really work related, but I feel like when this is over, we're going to realize, like, for all of us who have kids, that it was an extra struggle to have kids during this time because they're home, not in school. But we'll also be really grateful that we had all this concentrated time with our kids. You know what I mean? Like, or and people with pets, like their dogs. So we're really excited about being, like, there's going to be this period afterwards where we're going to be like, I kind of miss being at home all day. That was kind of nice. I miss movie theaters, and I miss going to concerts and seeing my folks and stuff. But I did like hanging out in my pajamas a little bit more than I should have.
So, some of the things that we touched on when we visited you guys back in February, which, as I say, does feel like it was a lifetime ago now, was we touched on the Microsoft stuff, and as we talked about at the top of this is now we're over a year now of you guys being a Microsoft studio, and I wonder if have you kind of relaxed into that? Do you guys feel like a Microsoft studio? Is that a thing? How much does that affect your day to day, aside from hopefully not having to worry about keeping the lights on and that kind of stuff?
Yeah. I mean, we're in touch with what the other studios are doing, but we are still running our own ship and making our own style of games. We haven't shipped a game yet with them, but we have been through big E3 shows with them, and we're part of the PR and marketing machine, and so we definitely feel like part of the team in that way. But we fight to kind of maintain our independence, and that's what they promised. And I believe that that's what they are interested in. So it sounds like a great deal. So far so good.
And it's presumably that's part of what they want from that deal is the personality of these different studios that they're buying.
Yeah.
And Double Fine certainly has that in spades. I think is that a when you had that conversation with Microsoft, was there a kind of we would like you guys on board because part of that conversation? Was it more of a, well, we want to kind of beef up Game Pass in various ways, but was there was there like a sort of a pitch to you guys about what it was that they were looking for from you? Did they talk about why they want the DNA of Double Fine?
I should have asked them that. I mean, I think they said, when they look back on all of our games and how the quality of each of the games, and imagine them being, Xbox Game Studio games, they would be extremely excited. They'd be like, oh yeah, if that was part of our body of work, we would be really excited. So, and the fact that we had transitioned from making one huge game into many small games and could create a volume of high quality stuff like Stacking, Costume Quest, and all our games, I think appealed to them.
Yeah, and have you?
But we'll never really know what they wanted. I assume it was just our cool swag.
Have you had the time yet to obviously you're still working on Psychonauts 2, but have you had the time to start letting those creative juices run and flow and all the things that creative juices do? Have you kind of noodled away on other game ideas? Have you kind of jotted down, we don't need to talk about specifics obviously, but is it something that, have you been able to kind of go back from being solely responsible for keeping the studio going from a management point of view, have you been able to kind of wade back into the creative waters and think about that side of things more, or is Psychonauts kind of taking up all of that energy?
Yes, to both. I did rather immediately start thinking of these 2 ideas that I've wanted to make that I realized I could never get a publisher to sign. And I was like, I think I could actually think about those games now. So I've been bringing those ideas back from the dead. But then also Psychonauts shipping has been like 100% consuming my time. So that's really all I think about these days.
That's fair enough. Yeah, that makes sense. So we've seen, in putting together this book, we've seen a lot of the concept art. We've seen a lot of the concept art for Psychonauts 2. We've been back through the physical archives of some of the much older games, and that was something that happened recently. Monica very kindly scanned a lot of the physical art that was in the drawers that were in one of the meeting rooms, and she went through and she's scanned all of that, and we're kind of digging through stuff that, as far as I'm aware, some of it has never seen the light of day, publicly at least. And I wonder, like, was that a thing? Has this notion of cataloguing and of keeping hold of the concept work and the building blocks that make up your games, was that something that you felt was important early on, or is that a thing that it's just been kind of, it's just happened that you look back and then you've got this treasure trove of stuff now? Like, is that because some people work almost entirely digitally, so they don't have that kind of those physical assets? But was that a thing that you wanted to kind of, that was important to you, or was it a thing that's kind of just happened over the years that you?
In some ways, it was a mark of its time, because we were still using paper a lot, and it was the habit of the artists, Peter Chan and Scott Campbell and Nathan Stapley, our early artists who just worked a lot on paper. Like Scott liked to grab paper bags from the grocery store and draw on them, and just work in weird mediums. And some of it was just the legacy of LucasArts, where we had a big flat file full of our art in the hallway that we is still up at the barn on Skywalker Ranch. We have to visit it when we remaster the games. And so we have a big flat file full of, we just were doing what we knew, which is like stuff all that art. You know, I've always valued art and artists, and you know, I still have a bunch of Lucas concept art they gave me when I left, and you know, it's just so you don't really have that anymore, as much physical artifacts of, you know, creativity. Seeing a handcrafted work of art on a piece of paper is just very powerful, you know. And I think whenever we have a chance of gathering that stuff or collecting it, like the newer stuff would be now, like Emily's puppets. Have you ever seen Emily making little paper dolls? Like she'll pitch a scene by waving a bunch of paper dolls around, and that's a great question. I wonder if those are saved somewhere. I hope we save those.
Yeah, well, it's something.
You never think about archiving in the moment. You always look back
true.
And you're like, why didn't anyone save better copies of this? And then when it's your turn, you're like, what?
Well, we have been suitably impressed actually with the breadth and depth of the archives that you do have, because I mean, of course you can always save more of that stuff, but you do have a lot of it from certainly the studios that we've been in touch with and seen, so, and it's nostalgic even from an outside perspective. It's, you know, to have played certain games at a certain time throughout the years, and then to be able to go back and see the things that went into creating those is quite I think it's quite a privilege actually. But it's also something that so various people we've spoken to, the Peters, McConnell and Chan,
all the Petes,
they talked about this. So quite independently of each other, they talked about Peter McConnell talked about how when he's composing, he likes to have art up of the game to kind of inspire him, and he mentioned Peter Chan in that quite directly, that he would have a piece of Peter Chan's work up and kind of work to that vibe. And then similarly, Peter Chan talked about using music to inspire him and get him in a certain mood. And I wondered, is there a particular part of that speaks to your creative process at all? Is there are you kind of somebody that when you're writing, do you like to have music on? Do you want it to be completely quiet? Like, how do you get into that zone?
That's funny to think of Peter listening to Peter McConnell's music and Peter McConnell having Peter Chan's art up. I have this one heavy metal playlist I always have going on Spotify, but it's like this one. It's like the same collection of metal songs that I've listened to and written to for like 50 years, 50 years, 30 years. I just remember mostly it was like to keep me awake at night when I was working really late on Grim Fandango. I'd be listening to Motorhead and writing. People would think I was listening to, Mexican folk music or something, which I did listen to a lot of during that game. But when I was writing, I need something that I can kind of tune out because I've heard it so many times. And so even stuff with lyrics I can listen to if it's stuff on that playlist, which I'm very familiar with, and so it doesn't distract me. I can't listen to like new music, like you have that Discover Weekly week, or some like playlist of new music I just can't listen to, and I need to focus on writing. But that's usually what I'm doing when I'm writing.
I find it quite easy to be distracted. Part of my brain starts going to something else and starts chewing on the lyrics if I'm listening to music that I don't know. I'm definitely a white noise kind of person. So we've seen, I think as well, part of your processes with things like the Double Fine Adventure documentary. There's plenty of stuff in there about kind of the post it on the door to say, do not disturb, writing till 11 o'clock, that kind of thing. Has your process changed much over the last, not necessarily 20 years, but even over the last sort of 5 to 10 years, since you've moved away from, you had moved away from the really big games, you've now moved kind of back into that with Psychonauts 2, but does it change if you're working on a really big game versus a smaller title, or are there always kind of similarities, always things that you go back to for?
Every game is different. It depends on how I interface with it. Like sometimes it's someone else's game, like Iron Brigade. It's Brad's game, but I'm going to write the cutscenes for it. So I would start off by talking to them, but in the end, it's usually me in my notebook, like a long, handwriting in my notebook, and then me in Google Docs, and then me. It's been very similar for a long time. I would say that hasn't really changed. The only thing that's changed is I've gotten worse and worse about doing my free writing every morning. I'm supposed to be doing free writing every morning, and I just so bad about it. I'm always telling people they should do it. I'm always lecturing people, like, you should try doing free writing, and then I never do it. Terrible.
Okay, I promise that this is the last mid-episode interruption from me, and I also promise that I'm not going to remind you again that 20 Double Fine Years is available right now to pre-order from doublefinebook.com. Definitely not going to remind you of that. Anyway, it's time for the final part of the show now, so let's rejoin Tim and Stace with Tim talking about what games he's been playing and how he's been playing them.
I've been playing a lot of Switch games this generation, and a lot of Animal Crossing during COVID, like a lot of people. And playing with my daughter is really fun because she's on the island with me. And lately, when I'm busy, I've been getting games played by just getting my daughter interested in them, and she plays them for me. Like I've always meant to play Undertale, but I just loaded it up and left it around on the Switch, and sure enough, she's playing it and telling me about it. And I was like, this is very efficient. But I do still play. Strangely, I've been really having this weird retro game thing going on since COVID, because I've always wanted to get into Atari 2600 homebrew. Like I've never done anything, and see how much fun like Ed Freeze and Mike Micah were having with it. I was like, I want to get into it. So I went and picked up, because I lost my old Atari, but it's part of my little setup right here now.
Oh wow!
Is this little here's my Atari, tiny little TV, and I've been like acquiring all the old games again. So it started as like wanting to, and I've been doing some homebrew and learning how to do 6502 assembly, and that's a lot of fun. And then but then I started, I realized there are all these games I never played because I got out of it around 82, and in 83 is when all the best games were made, and these games are amazing. And I feel silly, because most people, I think of them as, they're really simplistic, and it's just nostalgia, and but I really, there are a bunch of games that are really fantastic that I never played, Frostbite and Sequest and Hero. I'd never played Hero before. I hadn't not even played River Raid. River Raid was after my time. So going back and discovering all those has been really great. And I thought maybe I like all retro games. So I acquired a ColecoVision and some newer stuff. Newer, like the one generation after that, And I'm almost immediately they start to become less interesting, because there's as soon as video games could kind of do anything, they become less interesting. But those old first games where they could barely do anything, they could make a few blocks appear on the screen. It was so constrained that it just forced so many, I think, interesting decisions and focus. And anyway, I just think it's an interesting challenge. So I've been getting into that lately. And I still have my old adventure cartridge, which was like a seminal experience for me, right? Like this is, but, and I've been talking, I got to meet Warren Robinette, who was the first video game developer star that I knew of. Like I didn't know, I'd never known the name of anyone who made a video game before. And then I found that, through schoolyard gossip, that Easter egg in Adventure where his name is in the game.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't know that. Right. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's one of the first Easter eggs ever. And he put his name in the game even though Atari was against that. And I got to meet him at GCC one year, and it was like my first game celebrity experience. But
Awesome.
Anyway, so just being in touch with that. It's interesting because the way I have this set up is like I have my big Razer laptop that I play Psychonauts on right here. And so I have like the oldest video games ever made right here. And then like the newest hardware playing Psychonauts 2, which is one of the newest video games ever made.
Looking ahead from where we are now to kind of the next couple of years, how are you full of hope for the future? Is this, is lockdown getting you down? Like, how do you feel kind of looking ahead at this as this generation begins? I mean, this generation is literally beginning right here for you now with the console arriving on your desk. But how do you feel kind of looking ahead at the next 5 to 10 years of this next console cycle? Is it are you overjoyed? Does it feel like a treadmill? Are you just like, oh, here we go again? It's back.
No, I mean, and I don't know if this is just because you're asking after the election, but I am very hopeful. And that's part of the reason we went with Microsoft is that things are changing no matter what we do. And the idea of subscriptions and games, the way you get games is changing. And I like their plan for it. But in general, I saw how we fit into that. Like if you have a subscription type service where you're not, our games have always had this challenge of being like kind of weird and kind of like taking a long time to find their audience. Like it's a game like Psychonauts takes a while for people to hear about and be like, it sounds weird. And I don't know if you want to give like, a game about stacking dolls. That's not what I was looking for. But then eventually, like through word of mouth, people find out about them. And so how do you get past that barrier? If you want to do something that's really unique and original, how do you get past people's comfort zones, with it? And subscription services are great for that because you'll find yourself checking out things on Netflix you never would have walked out of a video store with. Like if you had one movie to buy on movie night and you come back from, remember video Blockbuster,
for sure.
right?
Yeah.
You came back from a video store, like you would be like, I'm going to get this Sherbet thing and maybe one extra. You wouldn't be like, I want to watch this documentary about a guy who makes sushi. Like you probably wouldn't check that out immediately, But I think on Netflix you'll be like, you'll try a bunch of stuff because you can always just back out of it. And so anyway, so I feel like our games are great for that because we make a lot of them and I think they're weird and interesting. So you might think like, I don't know for sure what I think about that, but I'm definitely interested. So that's what I want to make. I want to make games that make people feel that way, like not entirely comfortable at first, but intrigued and then hopefully delighted by the end of it.
Awesome. Well, I like that. That's a nice summing up. I'm sold. I'm sold on Game Pass. That's the future. Awesome.
There's something I thought of when we were talking about the team that is not the most positive thing, but it's kind of like I wanted to mention here because I forgot about it in a recent interview. People talked, it was on the Special Effect podcast, and they were like, someone asked like, do you have any regrets? And I always have a similar answer to this, which is really creatively like no, because I've always just done everything I feel like the right reasons. Like I feel like I've always followed our inspiration and done creatively the thing that was most, like we haven't done things for the money. We did things for artistic purposes and stuff usually. So we always feel good about them. But looking back at Double Fines and the time before that at Lucas, like I feel like the one thing I really regret and look back on and have learned a lot from were the crunch modes I put my team through, I think. It's the only thing I would look back on and be like, oh, that was really bad. And I don't think it came from a malevolent, exploitive place to me. It came from my habits of working and my focus and my priorities on the thing that we're making. From the very beginning, like being, working at Lucas, working on Monkey Island, and you just care so much about what you're working on. That's all you want to talk about. Is the game good? Is the game good? What else can we do to make the game better? Like that, and everybody around you just feels the same way. We're all like, the thing should be good. And it's not, even though, Ron Gilbert did come in our office and be like, hey, I think we have to start working nights and weekends. And we're like, all right, cool. I'm 21. What am I going to do? Go home and watch Mystery Science Theater? And, It's because other 21-year-olds have much more exciting lives. But anyway, even though we were told that, it wasn't because we were ordered to do that. It was because that's who mentally we all were. The thing has to be made. It has to be great. It has to be good. And that carried on till like Grim Fandango and like just like every this has to be good. And I was so obsessive about it that I was blind to other people also suffering. I'm like, yeah, of course we're all working late. Of course, the thing has to be good. The thing, and that when Psychonauts 1 was being made, that was like the worst crunch mode ever, where we were just all there. But everyone believed in it so much that everyone was just like, working till like 5 a.m. and just dragging through and just like, and that was terrible. And I didn't realize how bad it was at the time. And looking back on it, well, we did realize it was terrible right at the end. And then when it was over, we were like, never again. Let's never do this again. We're going to read a bunch of books on production methodology. We're going to learn about this new Scrum thing that people are talking about. And we're going to learn how to organize and lock down our builds and be just more predictable about our schedules. And we have some intense weeks here or there, on brutal but really nothing I would call crunch mode. And now we have a very strict policy about it. Like if anyone even suggests like glorifying crunch mode, it gets hammered down pretty fast at work. And so I feel like we've learned a lot. And as a company, that's now part of our culture. It's part of who we are. Like even if Microsoft told us to crunch on something, we would not crunch on it, because that's a big part of our values. And so I feel, and they wouldn't either. They haven't, asked for that either. But so I feel like even though we have not changed in a lot of ways, that's probably the biggest way that we've changed a lot as a company. I don't know if that fits in the book at all, but that's just something that I was thinking of from the last.
I think that's a hugely positive thing, because I think I've naively, I've never been through that. I mean, I guess I've been through my version of that kind of crunch mode, but not in that sort of very structured, organised way of working 6-day weeks and whatever it is. But I always naively, I remember hearing it described once as it's like when you tidy up your home, and it's like, well, you always kind of keep it tidy, but when people are coming over, you tidy up extra hard, kind of thing. And that was I remember hearing that description of crunch and thinking, well, yeah, I kind of understand that, but I feel that was perhaps naive. And I think the sort of the systematic reliance on it and the working it into a schedule, I guess, is where that comes undone, and that takes on a more nefarious flavour, because it's like, well, now you're planning to exploit people, and that's when it's not good. So so I guess the fact that you guys are very deliberately moving away from that is, particularly in this day and age, is only a positive.
Yeah, we haven't had a crunch in 15 years, I don't think. I wouldn't say.
Well, there you go. Cool.
But I did do it in the past, so
live and learn. Well, live and learn. That's cool.
That's it. That's our show, our interview with Tim Schafer, by us for you. I genuinely hope that you enjoyed it. Please do share with your friends, leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, all of that good stuff. That really does have a huge impact on the number of people we're able to reach with our podcast and everything we do. So we'd really appreciate it if you could share, could review. That'd be fantastic. And don't forget, 20 Double Fine Years is available right now to pre-order at doublefinebook.com. That's doublefinebook.com. Check out all of those pre-order bonuses. They won't last forever, so do go and get involved if you're interested. Whatever the case, though, come and see us on social media. We're at Indie by Design. We hope to see you back for next week's episode. Otherwise, all the best. Enjoy the rest of the week, and see you later.